So this is a multi-billion-dollar asset now in the making, which is quite lucky in a sense. I mean, we've been very tenacious to work through all the long grind of issues that we've had to work through to prepare regulatory reform.
Hello, you're watching Proactive. I'm joined by KEFI Gold and Copper Executive Chairman, Harry Adams. Harry, very good to speak with you, and congratulations on securing that $240 million debt package. Now that it's in place, what are the final steps to close the equity funding and trigger full project drawdown?
The critical thing was, A, the country to be ready, and the key regulatory hurdle, the last regulatory hurdle to cross, was in May when the Parliament of Ethiopia formally recognised that one of our two banks could join the party and officially do the business in Ethiopia. And ever since then, it's been really quite flat out to close the debt, which we've done in the sense of everyone signing off on the offer and acceptance of the detailed terms and so on. That means that the equity parties that we had assembled around us, we can now turn to close off, and they needed to know what's the missing figure, if you like, what's the last brick in the wall, because some money has already gone in as equity, and now the debt package has been cemented. So now that we've signed off on the debt, signed off on government permissions for this structure to proceed in the country for the first time. It's the first, institutional syndication of private sector deal in Ethiopia. We now have, if you want to call it a little competition or just a process of finishing off between, if you like, how much do we raise locally from local institutions and high net worths? How much do we raise from a mining fund? How much do we raise in the form of a stream into a gold prepay into the operating company, and show them all the final deals of the debt? How much are they in for, at what price in the final package? And everyone can sort of arm wrestle each other on getting the best deal done respectively. And we've allocated about a month to do that, to close that off, call a shareholders meeting to ratify everything, and we're away. So very exciting time. It transforms the company from an explorer and a sort of a regulatory reformist and a promoter, all the things we had to do to get to this point, into a developer. And long-winded answer there, Stephen, but I just tried to give you some feeling for it.
Can you walk us through the key construction milestones between now and first gold production, and when investors might expect cash flow?
The first critical thing which held up for a long time the project was to ensure that security was in order, to mobilize hundreds of people and hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment to be fabricated internationally and shipped to the site. And that wasn't sort of a one-day job. It was over the last 2 years that's been done. The site now has systems operating day to day on logistics, protection, route management, control rooms, all sorts of things that didn't exist 2 years ago, that have been installed by the government and by us to ensure that it's got what you'd call a first-tier level of protection for this site, which is a remote site, off the beaten track, so to speak. So that was step one. Step two, I suppose you could say, is when we triggered the design and construction contractor group called Lycopodium to set up the procurement, because it's a fixed price lump sum plant. And when you trigger them getting that, firming up the price, you have to go within 60 days. That's the deal. And And so that means around the end of November is the deadline, if you like, the way we've negotiated all that. So that was triggered, and we're on a fuse now to launch. The Lycopodium people have been at the site. I'm told they're very happy. We're very impressed with how we prepared everything for their arrival and mobilisation. And so the construction crews of our own and Lycopodium are now sort of raring to go. The first phase on the ground looks quite dormant because there's a community to resettle, and you're not allowed to just send bulldozers on people's land, obviously, and we have to resettle those people, and construction of housing and compensation payment, and that's all happening over the next 3 months for the first phase, and 6 months, for the follow-on phases. And then initial earthworks, which include things like the airstrip on the site and land site clearance. So you've got mobilisation early in 26 for construction. Procurement will have taken place and fabrication will be rolling of equipment. It'll start turning up in late 26. Power connected late 26. New roads finished completely before then. It's a sequence, obviously leading to plugging new equipment onto the site, fabricating it, assembling it, and plugging it into power on the site in 27, and commissioning gold production in late 27. It doesn't take long to come on stream, but commissioning will take place through 27, but the full commissioning, wet commissioning of the whole plant would be towards the end of 27. I don't know if that gives you an image of it, but it's a sort of an escalating pitch, if you like, as equipment gets delivered, assembled, and installed.
With gold prices near record highs, how do the latest Tulu Kapi economics translate into potential value or returns for KEFI shareholders?
Well, better than I ever dreamed of, to be honest. I suppose everybody in the gold sector might say the same thing. Maybe some people, have always predicted gold to skyrocket for a whole bunch of reasons that the whole world is reading about now and talking about now. But no operator could build them into their budgets or plans until they were a reality. And here we are with gold prices much higher than most of us anticipated at this point in time. And so you've got here a net cash flow for shareholders of at very conservative prices, nowhere near today's levels, of a minimum $1 billion over 7 years, and a maximum of several times that within the price ranges we're in today. If gold runs higher, it'll be even more than that. So this is a multi-billion-dollar asset now in the making, which is quite lucky in a sense. I mean, we've been very tenacious to work through all the long grind of issues that we've had to work through to prepare regulatory reform and site security and all these things for a project to be developed. And here we are, having got them to the point of readiness to launch the project, and having assembled the capital to launch the project. It serendipitously coincides with $4,000 gold. So you got to be lucky sometimes, haven't you? But there you are. So it's a multi-billion-dollar project. It's arguably the best margin gold project going into development in Africa today.
Well, Harry, I hope you'll continue to keep us updated with your progress. Thank you very much for speaking with us today.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.
Harry Adams, Executive Chairman of KEFI Gold and Copper.